Okay, hi Pixie, how are you doing? I wanted to stop by the studio today and make a video for you. I hope you're doing well. And the goal of my video today is to remind you of a couple of the tools that I gave you. I gave you the note map for the fingerboard, and I just want to give you some exercises to do. So before we do that, let's kind of see if we can get our bass in tune. So this is the G string. Make sure that your G string sounds like this. Okay, this is the D string. You can always go back and listen closely again. This is the A. And this is E. I already tuned my bass, so I know that I'm in tune. Okay, now, this week, we need to learn where our notes are, okay? On the side of your bass, I put some tape. I think I put at least 2 pieces of tape. I might have put 3. And I want to talk to you about where those pieces of tape are. So the first piece of tape is next to the F, which is where you would put your first finger to play an F, or an A sharp or a B flat, or a D sharp or an E flat, or a G sharp or an A flat. These sharps, they have 2 different names. They can either be E flat or they can be D sharp. They could be A flat or G sharp. They could be B flat or A sharp. Okay, so these are like the black keys on the piano, and they all have 2 different names. Okay, so we need to learn how to put our fingers on these notes when we read these notes. Okay, and I'm going to teach you that next time you come in for your lesson next week. Okay, I think I put another piece of tape over here by the G. Okay, and that would represent a whole step between the F and the G. Okay, so that's 1 whole step or 2 half steps. So the distance between F and F sharp is a half step, and the distance between F sharp and G is another half step. So 2 half steps equal 1 whole step, okay? And so there would be a whole step between F and G, and A sharp and C, or if you want to call it B flat and C, that's fine. D sharp and F, that's a whole step, or you could call this E flat and E flat to F, that's a whole step. And then G sharp to A sharp, or most commonly we would refer to this as A flat and B flat. You probably see that a lot more often. Okay, so now we got to talk about how we're going to play these. Okay, so you're going to find your tape over here on the side of the bass that I put. You're going to practice putting your first finger, and you're going to pluck on that E string. And if you have a tuner, it should read F. Okay, you may have to adjust your finger by moving it down the fingerboard or up towards the nut just a little bit. You're going for that in tune F. Okay, and you want to play whole notes, so that'd be a 4 count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then half notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then quarters. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then eighths. 1 and 2 and 3 and okay. And then move over to B flat. B flat. Make sure you can get it in tune. If you have a tuner with a green light, make sure you can get a green light on your tuner. B flat. Play whole notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Half notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Quarters. 1, 2, 3. Eighths. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. Half note. Quarters. 1, 2, 3, 4. Eighths. 1 and 2 take a moment and talk about my right hand a little bit. Make sure that your thumb is pointing at the bass and it's on the side of the fingerboard. And then you're gonna point down at the ground and you're gonna pull on the strings like this. Don't go like this. This is not, I don't suggest that you get into this habit, okay? Let's point down the strings and pull, use the whole finger on the string, okay? So anyway, across from F and B flat is E flat or D sharp, and you would play that note, okay, and then you go over to A flat or G sharp. Try and get that note to sound good, okay? Now the next step is we're going to use our second finger, okay? So remember earlier I said that the distance between F and F sharp is a half step. Okay, so when we would play that F sharp, we would use our second finger. So you notice how my first finger is still on F, and then I reach up, and the distance between my first finger and my second finger should be about a half step. And mine's a little sharp, so I'm just gonna bring it back a hair. There you go, there's my F sharp. And I'm gonna play whole notes, okay, and then move it over to a B, move it over to an E, move it over to an A. Okay, so we got practiced our notes, name our notes, you know, F sharp, F, F sharp, B flat, B, E flat, E, A flat, A. Okay, I'm gonna go from the G string back to the E string now. So you see I have my first finger and my second finger on, so that's a half step, okay? Now if I take all four fingers and I maintain this shape, so this is about a half step and this is about a half step, and what I'm looking for on my tuner is a B flat. So now I have A flat, A, and B flat. And notice how all my fingers are down. This is a technique you gotta practice having all your fingers on. Okay, so if your first finger's on, then that's just your first finger. But if your second finger's on, your first finger should maintain contact with the string. Sometimes it might be right behind the second finger, but we still need to know where that stretch is, okay, to get back, because we're always measuring the distance between the notes. It's a very, very important concept, something you gotta learn, okay, the distance between the notes. Learning the distance between the notes. And that is just music theory in general, like knowing that G sharp and A are a half step apart. But then physically, we have to know what that feels like between our fingers. This is a half step. Everybody's hands are different. So, you know, I don't have terribly large hands or anything. Some guys have huge hands, big fingers. And so they have to practice keeping their fingers close together because they naturally can stretch between their first finger and their fourth finger a lot farther than I can. Okay, but for me, I have to practice what does my half step feel like? And then you got to know your note names too. A flat, A, B flat, A flat, G, A flat. Okay, then you go to your next string. Okay, so we go to our next string, we have a D, and remember we did D, and we have D, E flat, or D sharp sometimes, E. You also have an open E. Do they sound the same? They're an octave apart. octave. And then above E is F. Remember I talked to you about the piano. There's two natural spaces on the piano where we have half steps. So if you're looking at a piano, and what you're going to see is you're going to see a pattern of 3 black keys on the piano and 2 black keys. And in between are 2 white keys, and there's no black key in between them. So this is the natural half steps. So if you're looking at the piano like this is E, and this is F. Okay, if I'm going to switch my keys now, so I'm going to go 2 over here and 3 over here. Okay, so now we're in a different spot. We moved over on the piano. So this would be B, and this would be C. So B and C are a half step apart. And then, look, if you go back, E and F are a half step apart. So look, we can find that on the bass. Here's an open E, your low string, and here's F, half step apart. Here's E, we just got to that on the D string, D, E flat, E, and here's F, E and F. It's like Jaws, Okay, so E and F. Notice all 4 of my fingers are on the string. I moved down a little bit, but I know where that is if I have to go back and play those notes, okay? Now we're going to do the A string. We're going to find that B and C half step on the A string. So here's A. The first finger is B flat or A sharp. And the second finger would play B. And the fourth finger would play C. So B and C, they're a half step apart. They're right next to each other. Here's C, here's B, here's B flat, here's A. Okay? Got an itchy nose. Okay, and then we'll go back to our E string and we'll do one more over here. So here's open E. And then our first finger will play F. So those are a half step apart. Remember where your half steps are. B and C are a half step apart, and E and F are a half step apart. Everything else is a whole step apart. Okay? Which would be like going from A to B. Notice how I have an open A. I skip the B flat, and I use my second finger to play the B, because between A and B, that's a whole step. Look, here's a half step and here's another half step. So the distance, remember we talked about this earlier, you gotta learn the distances between the notes. So open A and B, okay? Really, really important that you understand that. And then of course, here's B and C, they're side by side. That's a half step apart. Okay? All right, and we're going to do the E string too. So we have open E, we have F, half step apart. This is F sharp, and your fourth finger with your third finger right behind it is going to hold down G. So when you play your G, you can test your open G string. Do they sound the same? If they sound the same, then you've measured correctly. You've found G on the E string, and it sounds an octave lower than your open G string. And you'll hear the ring. If they don't, you'll hear the notes go whoa, 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 and they won't sound the same. Okay. Okay, so this little video right here, that takes us through 1, 2, 3, 4 notes on one string times 4, that's 16 notes, okay? Now, this is what we're going to do with this, okay? Because, your goal is that you want to play a bass line with your daughter while she plays the melody. Or maybe she'll play the melody on her bass, and you'll play a bass line, an easy bass line, and then maybe you'll sing the song. It'd be a lot easier for you to sing the song than her. Sometimes it's harder to play the melody and sing the melody at the same time, okay? And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about bass lines. Now, the easiest bass line that we can play as bass players is a bass line that goes from the root of the chord to the fifth of the chord. Okay, I'm going to show you what that sounds like. So I'm going to play 2 chords. I'm going to play a C chord and I'm going to play an F chord. Okay, so if I play a C chord, I'm going to find that on the A string. So here's A, here's B flat, B, and C. So there's my C. That's the root of the chord. Okay, now with the way that the bass is tuned, I can find the fifth of the chord in 2 different places. And we're going to focus on one right now. If the root of the chord is here, I can move to the fifth in a lower position by moving straight across. So I go from C and I move from the 4th finger C and I move right across to the G. They're right next to each other on the bass. Okay, and we go to the next chord, right? Now the other chord that I'm going to play is F. Okay, I'll show you the way that we're going to work on playing F for this lesson, okay? And I'll show you the other way next week, okay? So we have an open D. I'm going to move to my D string because that's where F is. This is D. My first finger is E flat. My second finger is E. And my 4th finger is F. And if you ever wonder, you know, you can always look at this. There's F. I'm on the D string right here, okay? So here's my D string. And I know that I'm going to use my 4th finger. Okay, so this is F. Same rules apply. Okay, if you're playing the root of a chord, the 5th below the root is just right across. Okay, so here's F and here's C. So if I was going to play an F chord, C chord. Now I'm going to go back to an F. Okay? So now this is going to take some work, but it's a very attainable goal. Okay? So let me just go over this goal for you one more time. So, number 1, find your notes. E, A, D, G, G, D, A, E. Learn the names of your strings. Learn the notes on each string using your 1st finger, your 2nd finger, and your 4th finger. Playing half steps. So I'm going to go to the G. G, A flat, A, and B flat. Okay? Go to my D string, D, E flat, E, and F. Go to my A string, A, B flat, B, and C. Go to my E string, E, F, F sharp, and G. Okay, now all the notes that we've gone over are in what we call half position. Half position is when your 1st finger is next to that first piece of tape that I put on the side of your bass, okay? So that's called half position. Anytime you're playing in half position, you should know where all the notes are, okay? So if I play all the notes in half position, this is what this is going to look like. I have open E. I'm not going to play any sharps. I'm just going to play letters. So I have E. My 1st finger would be F. My 4th finger would be G. Then I have an open A. I have a B with my 2nd finger. My 4th finger will play a C. I go to my open D string, play a 2nd finger E on the D string. My 4th finger plays an F. I play an open G, and I have an A. So that's a lot of notes. That's a really good goal, is to know where those notes are. E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. Okay? I don't expect you to be able to play it that fast. But remember, we got to know where those notes are because we're going to start reading notes. Okay? And we got to know where those notes are on the bass. So when we read the note, we go, oh, that's a B. Here's a B. And we play that bass line. Okay, then we can go to an E. We're going to go to up a half step to an F. And another one of my bass students, this is her favorite thing to do, is use open strings to play a chord. So you could play an open, like if you see a G chord, you could play open G and you can play open D. You don't even need your left hand. You could just go. That's a G chord. So you got to keep time in your right hand. You got to play good rhythm. Here's a D chord. D, A, D, A, D, A. Here's an A chord. Here's A and E. Okay, so this is your goal for the week. I know you're busy putting on a show with your friends. Beginning of next week, get your bass out, tune it up, okay? And practice, get these out, practice this half position that I talked about. First finger, second finger, fourth finger. First finger, second finger, fourth finger. 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4. Okay? Have a good week. I missed you this week. We had a lot of fun in the studio. I had 2 great rehearsals. I saw all my students this week, except for you. I'll see you next week. Be here.